Hello and welcome to the second session of the VIFF Immersed Volumetric Market. We are here for observations, opportunities, and lessons from a decade of volumetric capture. And none other than Jason Waskey from Microsoft Mixed Reality Capture Studios is going to be walking us through the odyssey, the journey that he has been on for 10 long years, figuring out how to bring holograms into your eyes. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really excited to hear this talk. And just before we get going, I'm going to once again thank our partners because without them, this would not be possible. First and foremost, thank you so much to VIFF. Thank you to Microsoft, Tetavi, Sense of Space, EV, the Museum of Other Realities. And even though the market side of this wasn't done in coordination with Storytech Immersive, I want to thank them as well because they curated a great exhibition that you can see at the Museum of Other Realities as well as on VIFF and a number of other platforms. So thank you to all of our partners. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason and disappear for a while. Those folks that are watching this, do throw in questions into the chat log. We'll do our best to get to it. We had 2 questions we weren't able to tackle in the last session. We'll try to get to that at the end of this in the Q&A. So thank you. And Jason, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What a great introduction, Renee. And just really, it's just such a pleasure and honor to actually be here to get a chance to do this for the VIFF Immersive kind of component. I think we can actually probably just throw up the deck and take it away from there. I'm going to try to do one of these back and forth remote. So if there's hiccups, it's all on my end. It's not anybody else's end. But I think we are going to try to get ready to go. So we'll kick off the first version of the slide. Boom, which is next, which is who am I? So I'm Jason. My name is Jason Waskey. I'm a creative director here at Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for just about 2 decades, or just a little over 2 decades. Before being at Microsoft, I was in the comic book world where I did both art and tech stuff, both as an art director, as a colorist. Telling stories is really sort of what I've always wanted to do as an artist. I've been lucky at Microsoft to get a chance to both build worlds and to help other people build their stories. So I spent the first 10 years of my career working on Microsoft Flight Simulator. If you haven't seen the new one, please take a look at it. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. All the dreams that we had long ago have been sort of made manifest. For the last 10 years, I've been working in volumetric capture. And it's been a really interesting and exciting journey. And I hope some of what we'll cover today, it's not super esoteric or highfalutin, but that there's some really tactical things that as people are looking to move into this space might find useful to take the advantage of the experience that we've had, which has generally been, we've stumbled a lot and the things that we've learned along those stumbles. I like to kick things off by pointing it to this is the oldest known photograph. It's Joseph Niepce. It's just almost 200 years ago. I look at this and I think about where we are as a society and a culture, that sense of humans have long been storytellers, right? From whether that be drawing on cave walls, whether that's sitting around the campfires telling stories. It's the stories we tell to others, the stories that we tell to ourselves. It's the model that we make of the world around us and how we try to transmit that model to other people. This photograph is the very first version of using technology to do that in a way that is meant to be as neutral as possible. That sense of that you use technology to capture a moment in time that was real, and to use that to move stuff forward. And so we think about where the technology has grown, the ability to capture human emotion, to be able to play that back with the appearance of motion, adding sound, adding color. This is really the starting point for humans to accept sort of photographic reality as a version of reality that we all accept as being sort of real and true. You think about, in the United States, Lincoln is like one of the first presidents really we think about sort of having a photographic record for. That's that sort of demarcation in our world and our culture about photography before and after. And now I think we're actually at that same sort of inflection point. So for us, I'll send my first version of that picture is this. This is a slide of something I saw. I had a while back, just about a decade ago, I had the opportunity to spend a summer doing prototyping work on what would become the HoloLens platforms. This is before HoloLens was a wearable device. It was all on a bench. Again, I got to spend the summer doing prototype work, came fresh off of that back to the group that I was in, which was part of Microsoft Research, an incubation and innovation group. The team that had been working on this gave us a demo of it, and basically you see this piece of this sort of almost sort of melted wax figure looking kind of person moving in space. But seeing that and looking and saying, oh, that is the future of what we need to make this platform, which is, you know, sort of novel and new, but all about sort of three dimensionality. That being able to create things that were real in the world, not just having an artist build avatars or art component that was sort of, you know, either cartoony or these other components, but being able to take the real world, recapitulate that back onto this platform. The second I saw that, even as janky as it was, I knew that that was something I wanted to work on. And for me, it felt like as powerful and as important as seeing that picture that Nieps took, right? That sense of, wow, we are at the cusp of a new future. Boom, so move on to the next slide here. Anything I talk about is really not talking about a specific technology. Microsoft has a volumetric technology. We're proud of it, we believe in it. But really at the core, everything we're talking about here is not a specific technological implementation. It's really about volumetric as a whole, as a thing. If you haven't seen the immersive light field work that's being done by Google, I encourage people to go out and run and find it and take a look at it. It's gorgeous, it's amazing. You know, the Intel solution, they've got some voxel components. These are all great. This is really, anything I'm talking about today is not about our specific technology. I will talk about some of the things that we've learned from that tech, but at the heart and the core, it's really about moving into this new world about supporting spatial stuff. I think about a TED talk that Alex Kipman gave in 2016, and he talked about this idea that human culture has spent about 100 years sort of framing our conversation with technology through a bezel, through a frame, and that you know, we have gotten ourselves trained to look through a screen, to look through this rectangle, to look through this bezel, and that as we move into the future of human-computer interaction, which is spatial, mixed reality, bringing digital components into the world around us to some degree, whether it's fully immersive like VR, or whether it's light augmentation of the content that we see, that the future of spatial computing is more like the way we actually engage the real world. And that world, in order for it to be valuable and to meet human needs, you know, we have to be able to bring people, places, and things in that environment. So when we talk about volumetric, it's really that sense of how do we bring people, places, and things into that space, again, as automatically as we possibly can. So more analogous to taking my phone up, taking a picture, taking a video, and just being able to publish that and display it in the platforms that we're all used to today. That will be the platform of the future, and we want to be able to do that volumetrically with 3D component. So again, talk about people, places, and things. Things are a lot easier to scan. Scanning a sneaker is not that hard by comparison. Scanning places and environments can be harder because they're full of lots of detail and they're big. But for the most part, those things tend to be static. For us, I really think about the hardest part is really about capturing people. And so for us, we talk about generating holograms from real life. I know that the term holograms or holographic can be sticky for some people, but when I say a hologram to people who don't know what we're doing, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So for us, we use the term holograms and volumetric fairly interchangeably, but at the core, it's this recording from multiple angles, recording real life from multiple angles, and using that result in spatial output. And the core value of that for us, I think, is really for people who are in this space, the volumetric makers, is that authenticity is what we ride on. So I use the word plastic here. Plastic is not meant to be pejorative. It's just meant to be, it's something that you can change and shape very easily. The core value of volumetric, no matter what technology you use to capture it, is that it's about authenticity. It's about the real moment in time that you've captured, about the real person, the things that they say and do, whether they are far from perfect, whether they're absolutely awesome, it doesn't really matter. You are capturing a real moment in time. Now, it's not to say you can't stylize that, right? Because you can. You can take this authentic output and do things to it that change the way that it's looked, but you really, at its core, respecting authenticity is incredibly important. Go back to that Intel example in that sense of, they did a really beautiful piece with Reggie Watts a couple of years back, an immersive VR piece called Runnin'. And Runnin' was part of it was to display this voxel approach. And so you see all sorts of dancers, you see Reggie Watts, they're all in this beautiful, amazing, stylized immersive space, very blocky, almost sort of Minecraft-like in terms of the way that the voxels describe stuff, but you are never you never lose the sense that that thing was recorded in real time. It was really Reggie Watts. That was really the dancers. And so you can stylize things without breaking authenticity. We find that there is the tension as storytellers, tension as artists, is that you want to break or bend the tool stuff that you have. And so there's this tension between authentic and plastic, where, like, for us, we do things, like an example is, if you want to break the fourth wall, look straight at the camera. If I do that in a 2D sense, no matter where you are in the room, I've made eye contact with you. It doesn't work the same way in 3D. We can do things in 3D where if I look straight ahead at the camera, if I look at one specific point in space and we record that, we can use shader work to change the head and the gaze to make it so that I can look at the place or look at a specific individual. Now, it's still authentic in the sense that the performance was a straight ahead performance, but we've made it a little bit more plastic by adjusting that to do what we want to do from a story-driven standpoint. Those are places where the authenticity doesn't break. It still works with the things that we do, but there is this tension about where do you use those components. And I would say that if you really need something that's plastic and fully interactive, then moving to digital doubles and avatars is really the space that you want to be in, as opposed to generating off of these sort of authentically captured moments in time. So that's kind of the highfalutin part of what we talk about here. Moving to the next part, which is really more sort of tactical, which is the sense of the things that we've learned over the years. And I will tell you, hands down, we heard talk a little bit about some of this in the last panel we were on. It's about pre-production, about the production sense. So things to talk about right now are about things that we've learned over the course of producing hundreds of shoots, thousands of captures. And that, as its core, that pre-production is where you need to spend your time. Pre-production is what's going to save you, because post, I'll talk about this in a second, post is not your friend, and post won't help you out. Pre-production is where you want to learn, test the stuff that you have out. So if you are looking at applying a specific technology, volumetric, you want to make sure that you take samples, which almost every single producer will have samples they can provide you, that it works with your playback platform, that if you want to run a relighting component or a shader component, that you learn before you shoot that the technology will serve what you want to tell for the story that you want to tell. One of the things that we do, even after spending, again, over a decade at this point, doing captures, is we work with our clients and we do a test shoot. We do a test session before we do the main shoot. And so what that means is we bring the client, we bring the talent, they come the day before main shoot starts. We generally do a half-day test where we get the client used to space, we get the talent used to the space, because it is a different space than standard production set. We have people kind of be fairly relaxed, but they get a chance to actually work out any issues, open issues we have with hair, makeup, and wardrobe. We film just enough material that we can process it overnight, at least to first pass quality, so that we can all look at it the next day. And what we've learned by doing this, and it's worth every penny you spend. I know it can be expensive to have the client or the talent there the night before, but what we've learned is you get a better performance because people are more used to the space. You answer questions that people didn't really even know that they had by being able to see content that they have a direct connection to in the next day. A good example of this, where we were running a 2-day shoot with the Mexico State Police. Their uniforms are black. Now, volumetric capture, black fabric can be problematic. With the specific technology that we use, which uses infrared, we can capture dark and blacks without too much of a problem. But some of the dyes that they use for dark, blacks, navy blues, they tend to be IR absorbent. And in this case, the uniforms for the police were completely IR absorbent. They were not at all volumetrically capture friendly. We did this test, showed the client how bad it was, and what we were able to do was to use the wardrobe department to go and buy new clothing that was IR friendly, but was also still black and dark, and actually recreate the uniforms for the next day shoot. We were able to do that. It saved the client money, because otherwise they would have had to reshoot. They didn't have money to do that. They didn't have the time to do that. So that test session really will save you money in the long run. Highly recommend that folks do it if you get an opportunity to do it. I will say Microsoft is not a content company. You know, we don't have film IP. We don't have a lot of artists, musicians. We do have Xbox, which is some form of content, but content production is not in our bones. It's not in our core. And it's something that we've had to learn over time, which is that the production value that you put in is the production value you get back out. And so the lessons about that are hiring the highest level of professional talent you can to put on screen, about using professionals for hair, makeup, and wardrobe, because again, they're likely to save you money. You see everything in 3D, which means if you haven't steamed, or you have a wrinkle, or you have a cut, or you have a mic cord that's out, those are things that you will see if your person turns around and changes their point of view. So hiring professionals to the best ability that you possibly can will always give you a better result back out on the other end. And again, whether that's an indie shoot, a high-end professional client shoot, the best of your ability to spend to get the professionals who know what they're doing in their departments, we highly recommend. So we'll move on to the last one here, which is about post. You know, in the 2D industry, the saying is, you know, we'll fix it in post. And the short answer here is that in volumetric is that post is not your friend. There are post-production tool sets, third-party pieces that are coming onto the market. A lot of the providers who build and create volumetric capture build their own tool sets. We actually build tools that we give to both our clients and to the partners who license our technology. You can fix stuff, but the short answer is that actually the things that you have to fix in post, you will generally see the artifacts of the fix. It's very, very hard. It's time consuming. It costs money to fix things in post, which is why you want to do it in pre-production. The example I'm showing up here is we've worked out a workflow, a pipeline to capture people's glasses. Glasses are not very volumetrically friendly, thin, they're transparent, but they're 60% of the population wear glasses. It approaches 90% as we age. So we've developed this pipeline where we'll let someone wear their glasses, and then we go in and post and basically sort of pull the glass part out of the point cloud, add a new piece back into the point cloud. You can see here that we get a little bit of the sort of CGI glasses reconstructed. Why do we do this? Well, because you get the benefit of seeing the shadow on the face. Some specularity of the texture is captured back in. But the problem is that workflow, you know, it's multiple steps long, takes forever to do. It's not practical to do that on something that's longer than 30 or 40 seconds. So again, post is really not your friend. And again, I'll say this over and over again because people call us when they're trying to hit deadline. Test your components out before you go to the shoot. Work your pipeline before you actually are on deadline. It will help you out. It's always really hard to get the call on Friday afternoon that something doesn't work and they're not going to make their deadline. I've had that call more than 4 or 5 times over the course of my career. Try to make sure that you work out your issues as much as you possibly can up in advance. I know we've got some questions in the channel. I'm hoping we can actually address those at the very end, just in part because the flow I've got here is fairly fast. So Renee, I'm hoping that you'll keep me honest and we can come back to these at the very end of the piece. Let's go to the next piece here. People always ask me, gosh, Jason, why does this cost so little? No one ever says that. Everybody believes that the work that we do is very expensive. And for an indie production, the truth is, yes, it is expensive, but it's important to talk a little bit about cost and where some of this stuff comes from. We did an analysis between a professional green screen shoot and one of our 3-minute shoots. So 3-minute green screen professional and 3 minutes of our capture. And actually, we're cheaper than the professional green screen production. And the reason is that you don't rent cameras, you're not renting lights, you don't have to hire a DP. For us, most of the cast and crew, you can see here just along the timeline of the number of people who will support a person on our shoots, it's pretty deep, right? You don't pay for those things. You don't think about having to pay for those things in a volumetric shoot because they come bundled in the product. You don't rent the cameras, they come with the shoot cost. Again, we are driving the cost down. We work to try to make this as cheap as we possibly can, still retain high visual quality, high visual fidelity. But that cost is really, there's so much that on a standard traditional 2D shoot that people pay for that they don't really think about. And again, it boils down to equipment rental, the number of crew that you have to handle. That's stuff that generally on a volumetric crew or set will come baked into the thing that you do. Move on to the next. If you're going to make a movie, you know, a lot of people talk about this. I can't emphasize it enough, which is that you should look to theater to make your next movie. And the rationale here is that the work that we do is more akin to a theatrical production in its final element than it is to a standard 2D movie. We talked a little about this in the last panel, but that sense of the language for how we tell stories volumetrically hasn't really been written yet. People haven't had enough exposure to know how to create a Dutch angle in volumetric, how to set pacing and energy with a jump cut, because a jump cut doesn't really work very well in a fully immersive piece. You can make people sick. Incredibly, if you can, make friends with choreographers. If you possibly can, they will help you with your production. Look, Cirque du Soleil, I know they've gone through trouble, their bankruptcy because of COVID. If you look at sort of like Cirque du Soleil, some of the other more interesting avant-garde theater like No More, and how they build space and how they build moving people through both space and time. If we think about that sort of where we are, the intersection of standard film, theater, and interactive gaming, or at least the camera control work that people are used to having through interactive gaming, that's what volumetric productions provide. So while there is no close-up, everything is a close-up. And so if you're thinking about building that movie, really look to how folks in the theater industry have built timing and pacing to get that emotional import across. I'll go to the next slide, which really is about sort of a corollary to that, which is let people breathe. VR is new to people. AR is new to people. Well, volumetric is also new. And the more new and impossible things that you stack into an experience, the higher the cognitive load, the higher the tax that we're asking people to pay to view the experience. And so when we're thinking about building stuff, allow more time, actually literally just more time. So if you've ever seen soap operas, they have the soap opera pause where people hold for a while. Those are the kinds of things to encourage you to put into your productions, to let people actually take a moment to breathe, to get situated into the space, even if it's just their own space, to see people, to give them a moment in time to actually look at what's going on, to see what the spatial establishment is between people, let alone sort of the emotional component. Move on to the next one here. Boom. I'm playing along at home at the same time here. So boom, next slide up. I will say one of the opportunities that people I think have missed so far in the space that we do, a lot of people want to build avant-garde components. And so people are always pushing to do the next and the new thing. There is actually a platform that is ready today, and that's the 2D sense. So we started with this saying that the future of human-computer interaction is spatialized, and it's true. But there's no reason not to hit the billions of devices that are out there right now, which means 3D experiences on 2D devices, phones, on your laptop, wherever those are. We can build experiences now. You can build experiences now that you can share with billions of people, which means you actually have a market that you can reach if you want to sell tickets. That content is still ready for fully immersive pieces down the road. You're future-proof from that standpoint. But really encourage people to explore being able to tell volumetric stories on the devices that are already there today. So look sort of at the next standpoint on where's the future and what does the future hold? Well, I'll just say really briefly that for us, we think that the future is about interconnectivity and ubiquity. Interconnectivity being that sense of we want to get to, if you've ever seen Microsoft a few years ago, we did a thing called holoportation as part of a research project. That sense of being able to give you live. Right now, the stuff that we do takes a fair amount of time to process. It's expensive, lots of cameras. The idea here is we talk about interconnectivity, we talk about ubiquity, about making sure that we are able to bring live stuff to people, that we will get a lot more people able to produce the content. And that gets us to the last and most important piece, which is that the volumetric world that we build must reflect the real world. And there's two ways about what that means. And one is the people that we put in front of the camera, right? So making sure that we are able to recreate the world around us in the way that the world is, whether that's skin tone, whether that's folks in wheelchairs, whether that's natural hair. Across the board, the way that we choose to express our identity needs to be reflected in the things that we see in front of the camera. That means the tech has to improve and get better. It also means that we actually have to make sure that we are aware of who we put behind the camera. And so for us, that means making sure that the people on set are as diverse as the people we put in front of the camera. The ways we try to do it at Microsoft is we are too slow, but we're trying to hire our way out of that. So bring more diverse people onto our team to help us to tell the stories. And we make sure that we are actually trying to bring more people into the mix to tell stories. So one of the things that we're doing, Microsoft, is as soon as the COVID restrictions open up, our intent is to work with folks like the Kaleidoscope team to actually do some grants. So like the Fem Futures is a good example of a grant that is pitched towards a particular population, particular audience. Our goal is to actually make sure that we bring and make the opportunity for people from multiple audiences that are underserved or underrepresented to have an opportunity to tell their stories volumetrically. It's just one of the little small things that we do. We have stages all around the world. They're opening up on a daily basis. And so making sure that, again, that we're not making the same mistakes that happened in the film industry is a classic example. Color photography has been, historically, it was the color that you would use was pitched in order to sort of for lighter skinned folks, which meant that people with darker skin, darker pigment in their skin were too dark. Like actually, it was not an accurate representation of the world around us. And so we can't We don't want to repeat those same mistakes that have happened as media comes along the way. We have to make sure that we have more people that are diverse in front of the camera, more people that are diverse behind the camera, and we also need to make sure that we are not leaving people behind to tell stories as we move forward. So that's it for me at the end of this piece. We leave this last little piece up. It's a QR code. If you want to try it at home, you can try to scan the piece here. You can contact me through the link that you see down below, or you can try to find me on Twitter. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but we try to leave some time open for questions. So Renee, I'll throw it back to you if we can. Oh, and you're on mute, Renee.
I was just talking very softly. Great presentation, Jason. Thank you so much. Only a few minutes before our next panel. You covered one of the questions that was asked, which is why do you think volumetric capture is a better solution than more VFX style capture like green screen? And it basically came down to cost and complexity of being competitive there. So I don't think we need to dive into that one. The other question was around the logistics of going on location to capture segments of an event that you need to take a plane to get to, which obviously is very difficult right now. Is it possible to do it outdoors, or is this something that has to be in a controlled environment?
It's a great question. Short answer is our specific solution, which uses IR, it's an indoor solution. We do have a mobile version of what we do, so it's a reduced camera set that we can bring and take to new places to do setups. But the volumetric field wide, there's no real limitation about being able to shoot outdoors. And actually with our system, if we didn't want to use the IR input, we could actually just take the RGB cameras and put them in outdoors. The multiple solutions that are on deck right now can do the outdoor stuff. Same thing again with ours. Short answer is it's just harder to do. It's harder to get a great result out of that, but it is totally possible to do. Tobias Chen, Volumetric Camera Systems, has actually done some really great work in this space. He's actually out of Vancouver, Canada, so Canada represent. Just to get a chance to see any of his work, he's done a great piece, I think, in a outdoors work. He's spent a lot of time showing outdoors work, which is definitely worthwhile if you get a chance to see.
Yeah, and Tobias Chen is based in Vancouver, and I can put you in touch with him if you like. His camera rig is really quite interesting, and one of the few people that I know that's specializing in outdoor capture. Well, with the last minute we have, why don't you tell people about the specific award that you're giving at the VIFF Immersed Volumetric Market?
Really very quickly. So part of what we want to do, it's kind of the starting launching point to sort of the grants that we mentioned. We are going to give a certain amount of time, so some minutes. We tend to think about our work product in terms of minutes. So I think the order of it's somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes of production time. That's on our stage. We give you the same pre-production support that we give to just about anybody else that comes in, which means we'll help walk through your script, your production, to make sure that you're able to do the things that you want it to do with the production. But it's a fairly substantial in-kind award, and we're looking forward to announcing that, awarding it, so that we get a chance to work with new creators and bring someone new, again, behind the camera, give them an opportunity to work with our production stage. We're really looking forward to that.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time and generosity and your work. You've really pushed the medium forward, and we all owe you a debt of gratitude. Before we hand it over to the next session, which will start in just 5 minutes, I want to thank the Province of British Columbia, the Western Economic Diversification Fund, and the Canadian Media Fund, as well as the Producer Association of the Canadian Media Fund. They're folks that have made this all possible, so thank you. With that, we'll say goodbye for 5 minutes. We'll see you back here for the next session, the role of spatial storytelling in shaping new artistic languages. And we've got some of my favorite people on the call, some of my favorite artists. So I'm really looking forward to that. See you in 5.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, Jason.